Another question we must respond to and reflect on is the question of unity. Fighters, there has been a much debate and discussions across our nation about the cause of black unity and unity amongst the progressive forces. As part of the preparations for this Third National People's Assembly, we were questioned by our own branches as to what constitutes a progressive forces. We must have a coherent response to our own branches as to what continues to motivate certain alliances we have in society. But for the interest of defining our political moment, we must define what characterizes the progressive left in South Africa. To merely say you are progressive does not mean you are progressive. To merely state that you are on the left or that you are black conscious does not make you leftist or black conscious. To belong to these categories is proven through action, through ideological persuasion, through practice. Black unity and has always been imperative in South Africa, but blackness should not be used as a shield for opportunism or to escape one's own wrongdoing. The disparate need for black solidarity must not be taken advantage of by individuals who manipulate the black identity to avoid accounting for how they have jeopardized the cause of black liberation. There are forces in South Africa today who have discovered the cause of black unity after they previously undermined it while they were in power, and this discovery is manipulative. You as delegate must ask yourself, where was this black consciousness and black unity when the Marikana workers were killed? Whose blood nourished the birth of this economic emancipation movement, while the so-called new leaders of black unity were sitting as state president and even justified the killing of mine workers in Marikana, who were all, by the way, black. Did the need for black unity not exist when the youth of this country were shot, jailed, and killed for demanding free education under the new messiah of black unity? When the EFF offered its 6% in parliament to amend the Constitution of South Africa to expropriate land without compensation, and this was rejected by the former liberation movement, where was the black unity then? Fighters, we must never allow black consciousness to be misused to con our people into forgetting, nor allow it to sanitize the legacy of failure and corruption. There are individuals who committed themselves to undermining the liberation of black people while in government and now, in an attempt to rescue their legacy of compromise and collaboration as head of state, director generals, CEOs of strategic state-owned enterprises. They reach for black consciousness as they approach their grave. When they were fresh, they didn't know black unity. Now they see the grave, they see black unity. It is our revolutionary responsibility to vehemently reject black unity born out of convenience and opportunism, to tell those who live lives of betrayal while they govern, that Steve Biko will not welcome them on the other side because they are non-white and agents of capital. Black consciousness is a political conviction that not only relies on the color of your skin, but also on your consciousness itself. You can be black, yet advance divisive politics of tribalism. You can be black, yet act as an agent of white supremacy and corruption. You may identify as black, but your character can still be defined by deception and dishonesty. You can be black and still sell out your brothers and sisters for a few pieces of silver. We, as the EFF, do not subscribe to unity based on skin color alone in our pursuit for liberation. We subscribe to a political unity defined by ideological conviction and honest politics, a unity that will bring about the defeat of our strategic enemy. Our enemy knows that it is the EFF that is the true liberation movement and not a pocket knife for individuals and self-gratification. In our history, we have never betrayed our people. As a result, we do not merely claim to be the home and inspiration of black people and black unity. We have earned this role. It is the flag and the logo of the EFF that strike fear into the hearts of the white capitalist establishment. This is because we have earned the fear of the enemy. For this, we must be proud. The EFF is not in a fight for its own survival, but because we already live in the hearts and minds of our people. We are now in a fight to defend the cause of liberation from losing legitimacy because criminals want to use ideology as a weapon of self-defense. If we allow the politics we subscribe to be delegitimized by criminals masquerading as messiahs of black unity, it will take decades of the left to regain credibility, and right-wingers and capitalists will rule us for centuries to come. Our triple task as a revolutionaries today, as we rebuild, defend, and advance the struggle for economic freedom, are to combat liberalism, revisionism, and opportunism. We must not allow opportunists to reverse history, nor ideology to die at the hands of liberalism while we live through the brutality and reactionary rule of those who preach black unity. Ideology must never be used as a tool to wipe away the practical failures of those who have led this country. We must defend Steve Biko, even in his grave, from being used by syndicates that serve individualism. Fighters, one thing we must be proud of as this National People's Assembly is that the majority of the delegate is women in this conference, which proves our commitment to allowing women to be at the center of political decision-making in the EFF. Out of 2,513 delegates, women delegates from their branches. Out of 2,513 delegates, 1,685 women are nominated as delegates from their branches, while 828 males were nominated. Fellow fighters, this organic representation of women in our conference is a sign that the narrative that the EFF does not appeal to women can no longer stand. 66% of delegates to this conference are women because the EFF is an organization that has begun to appeal to women, and these women form part of the highest decision-making body of the EFF in their majority. The EFF subscribes to the notion of Thomas Sankara, wherein he states that, I quote, "There is no true social revolution without the liberation of women. May my eyes never see and my feet never take me to a society where half the people are held in silence. I hear the roar of women's silence. I sense the rumble of their storm and feel the anger of their revolt." Close quote. Our nation is one where women live in permanent fear and silence, where women are murdered, undermined, and subjected to triple oppression, where they are oppressed because they are black, they are poor, and they are women. The participation of women, therefore, at this level, is not something to be taken lightly, because women must lead their own emancipation. We want to salute the branches of the EFF for not paying lip service to the women's struggle by electing them to determine the future of our movement and our nation. Comrade delegates, as part of holding ourselves accountable and tracing what we committed to do as this leadership elected at the Second National People's Assembly in 2019, we must reflect on the resolution made at the conference and account for what has been achieved. In instances where there have been resolutions that have not been implemented, we must stand here honestly and explain what the material challenges were. It is this NPA that must resolve on what is to be done to ensure that these ideas are achieved. Delegates to the Third National People's Assembly, part of the resolution on the land question on the Second National People's Assembly was that even though other political parties support the concept of land expropriation without compensation, they do so for completely different reasons, and reasons that may be against the ideals the EFF stands for. It was therefore resolved that the EFF must object to any amendment to the Constitution that will not result in the fundamental restructuring of the property rights regime in the country. Furthermore, the Second National People's Assembly resolved that the EFF must object to any amendment to the Constitution that will entrench the status quo and produce superficial changes. It was therefore on the basis of this resolution that we, as the EFF, after fearless participation in Parliament and numerous bilateral meetings with the former liberation movement, rejected the proposed amendment to Section 25 of the Constitution intended to entrench compensation for land expropriation and willing buyer, willing seller in the Constitution. We rejected this. This amendment was a distortion of the original EFF motion as it pertained to compensation and custodianship, as the former liberation movement remained committed to a failed restitution process that is premised on compensation and title deeds as opposed to state custodianship. Delegates, in terms of the resolution regarding broadcasting and the media terrain, the EFF second NPA resolved that there must be the immediate removal of Section 60, subsection 3 of the mass carry requirements altogether from the Electronic Communications Act. There should also be an amendment to the Electronic Communications Act in a way that allows the SABC to freely negotiate retransmission consents agreements on commercial terms with other players in South Africa and internationally. As I stand before you today, after the hard work of the EFF in Parliament, it was on the 1st of April 2022 that the Independent Communication Authority of South Africa, ICASA, amended the mass carry regulation, and they now require subscription broadcasters to carry the public broadcasters' channels, subject to commercially negotiable terms. The EFF was at the forefront of correcting a historical wrong that had given subscription broadcasters the right to carry SABC channels at no cost since the enforcement of the mass carry regulations in 2008. Delegates of the Third National People's Assembly, in 2019, it was resolved that the EFF establish alternative broadcast, radio, print media to guard against negative characterization of socialist ideas and the left in general. Seated here today, the EFF has its own state-of-the-art studios at Winnie Madikizela Mandela House, wherein we record our own weekly